This is Right Now, streaming on the CBS 8 app. I am Chris Gros, joined as always here by Jack Cole. It's 9 a.m. here on this Wednesday, but it is officially July 1st, and we have a ton of headlines and news to get to, Jack. We have, obviously, the end of the Larry Millete murder trial, the prosecution's case, I should say, not the end of the trial. Don't want to give anybody a bit of a jump scare there, but we also are jumping into the use of AI by a dispatch center here in San Diego County. That's something that is obviously going to catch a lot of people, maybe, get their ears perked a little bit about AI being used in certain cases. World Cup coverage, Team USA plays today. But of course, we are going to start with the Larry Millete trial, because after more than 6 weeks of mostly circumstantial evidence being presented in the prosecution's case, they have rested their case here in the murder trial of Larry Millete, and it's now the defense's turn to present its case to the jury. Our Kelly Hessedal, who has been covering this since day one, really since day zero, if you think about it, was in the courtroom yesterday and has the latest from the South Bay Courthouse.
And shortly after the lunch break, the prosecution rested its case. Then the judge announced the defense will begin presenting its case tomorrow. And he also said the defense is expected to rest its case tomorrow as well. So you could hear kind of these courtroom murmurings at the time, because I think a lot of us were pretty stunned. We were initially told it was going to take 4 to 5 days for the defense to present all of its evidence. So it was pretty surprising to hear they were going to take just 1 day. And so what does this mean? Well, one of the big things I think it means is we likely won't be hearing from Larry Millete on the witness stand, because I would imagine if he were to testify that would take longer than 1 day with the amount of cross-examination from the prosecution. Now, before all of this, the final 2 witnesses from the prosecution, including cell phone records expert Peter Villiver, he walked the jury through the days surrounding Maya's disappearance using cell phone records and data. Larry was spending a lot of time on the phone with his family, with his parents, who were living in Texas at the time. He's talking with his Aunt Kathy Fredericks a lot. He's messaging spellcasters constantly. Now, there were a couple of things I noticed about the evening Maya disappeared. Maya called a divorce attorney. At 8:12 p.m., she was searching online for a dirt bike. Then she was messaging her family about a trailer. 9:23 p.m., Larry sends a screenshot of his investment portfolio to his daughters, Laura May and Maylani, to their phones. The prosecution never really explained much about this, never really got into the theory about why they think he did this. Now, 10:35 p.m., a neighbor's surveillance camera captures audio of the Millete children playing outside. Now, meanwhile, we also heard from a DA investigator about all of the media coverage, the national and international coverage of this case. Basically, the prosecution trying to tell the jury if Maya was out there, someone would have spotted her, or she would have contacted someone. Now, the timeline on where we go from here, the defense expected to wrap up tomorrow. The judge indicated the court will be dark Thursday, Friday, and also Monday, and that jury instructions and closing arguments are expected on Tuesday. So it's possible the jury could begin deliberations as early as Tuesday. Kelly Hessedal, News 8.
So no, we assume, because we're going to see about 10 a.m. So in just about an hour here, we're going to see these proceedings take place, and we're going to see the defense start their case here. Only 1 day. We heard from both Jenny Day and from Kelly last week. We had them both on Thursday and Friday. Again, about this timeline, they said about 4 or 5 days is what was the initial expectation for how long it was going to take the defense to bring out and lay out their case. We're now seeing 1 day. This timeline of how long this trial was expected to take is getting abbreviated. All of our expectations going into it, we heard 3 months. Yeah. We're looking like, depending on how long deliberations take place, it's safe to assume, though, that's not going to be 3 months. We're looking closer to maybe about 2 months with an extended break, maybe a tiny bit longer, but nonetheless, we're looking at about 2/3 as long as this was intended to be. Same thing with the defense, 4 to 5 days. Now 1 day, that's anywhere from 25 to 20% of what we initially expected it to be. So, you mentioned at the top of the show, you don't want to give anyone a jump scare and have them think that we are going to see all of this be ending, but we're getting a shock as this comes through, because this is happening a lot quicker than we had originally expected this to be.
Yeah, and I think that in the cases that I've covered in the past, while very few have risen to the sort of status, I would say, one like this, very, very few have. it is very often that sometimes you will hear sort of a conservative estimate, meaning, if a case really goes 3 months, they'll say, oh, this could be a 5-month case. This could be a 3-month case. It's really just a month case. And so I think it's not too uncommon for that to happen. Generally speaking, it is often always the prosecution who has a much larger caseload.
The burden of proof.
The burden of proof. I am shocked that it's going to be 1 day for the defense. And at least that's the estimates that we're hearing. We'll get into a little bit more of the timeline here moving forward. But I was a little bit shocked by that. And obviously, we can kind of go over what it is that was covered here at the end of the case by the prosecution. But I think that was something that was notable. That's what gave me my own jump scare, was this idea that the defense will not have a very big case themselves.
When we were talking to Jenny and Kelly, we were asking them, put your lawyer hat on.
Yeah.
And just from your perspective, if you were the defense attorney and you were the lead counsel for Larry Millete, do you advise him to go on the stand? She said, both of them, I think, said, we asked at least one of them, an emphatic no. We can assume that both of them would say that just because that's kind of the sense of what we've been getting. And it's been such a titillating question to ask as we've been waiting and expecting this defense to start their case, because we've seen Larry be very open to talking to the media, doing a bunch of different interviews throughout this whole entire process, even after he was, arrested. And so it was interesting to see if there was going to be that moment where he goes under oath and he gives his side of the story, because we've gotten it in many different aspects from behind bars, but we haven't seen it in front of a jury, in front of a judge. And so, that was what we were waiting for. But there's obviously issues that could be risen from that being the case.
And mind you, he was talking to some members of the media even prior to his arrest, there, and even post arrest. Like this is someone who, not even during the trial, but oftentimes throughout this entire, we're going on 5 years now, right? Since January of 2021. This has been someone who has sought media attention. Yeah.
So a little bit of a surprise. We understand that there are risks associated with it, especially because there's just so much still that we do not know. We've heard some of the reasonings that he's given for some of his absences. We're going to talk about one of them today. That, of course, is the 400 miles, the 12-hour time in which he was not at the home the day after Maya was disappeared. We've heard him say that he was in Solana Beach, and we that's what he's been saying. What are we going to hear under oath? Is that something that truly happened? Is that a cover? That was one of the things that I think we were interested in seeing, because there's still so many unknowns. And if you're a prosecutor, you want to get that on the record. Yeah. So, that could, if Larry is in fact not telling the truth about that, that was that opportunity. But, regardless of whether he is guilty or innocent, oftentimes this is the best, the best advice your defense counsel will give you. So,
I wonder if this is also, just going back to the estimate on their case, I wonder if this is a vote of confidence or a vote of no confidence. Do you know what I mean by that?
It could be just,
we don't have much, or maybe they feel like the prosecution sort of did their job for them. I truly wonder and Kelly said that this is a defense team that has not been media friendly. And look, different lawyers interpret the use of the media and that strategy in their own way. Some are very adamant about using the media. We'll bring you in on a lot of discussions and off the record things.
They want to dominate the narrative.
They want to dominate the narrative, right? This has been a team that has been very reluctant to media attention. And I say that because I would love to be a fly on the wall right now to see what is the answer to that question. Is it because simply they feel like the prosecution, because it was 90% circumstantial, that we got a good feeling about this? Or is it just we A, don't want to put him on the stand, and B, just don't really feel like there's a whole lot that we can do here. And maybe those two things are sort of together here. I don't want to belabor the point, but to be a fly on the wall.
And for those of you who, there's a lot of people who have been watching a lot of this content, and we thank you for that, because we've really been trying to do our best and bringing you the most up-to-date information. But up-to-date is also one of the things that sometimes we struggle with, because we cover Monday's action on Tuesday, Tuesday's action on Wednesday. There are certain times during this trial where we have been sitting here and we're like, oh my God, I wish we were in the courtroom right now. Yeah. Sometimes it's just painstakingly, difficult to talk about the day prior's action when we know that perhaps today
something else completely
is the big one. The Jamie Laird testimony was a big example of that. We were talking about it the day prior. We're like, we're so excited to break this down tomorrow because we've been talking about it for so long. We have this man on the stand. We want to hear what he has to say. So when you raise that question, it feels like one of those days.
Or I would even go as far as, I think one of the better examples is the day that we were discussing the Jamie Laird testimony. Mm-hmm. His wife, or his ex-wife, Patricia was on the stand, and according to Kelly, was delivering what she felt like was more explosive testimony. And so it's one of those things where, a lot of people have this vision of court cases, big ones, being like live TV streamed. Obviously, that all goes back to the O.J. Simpson case and obviously subsequent cases. I think high-profile big ones, Casey Anthony, that was one where I was an intern in Orlando when that was going on, and same with George Zimmerman, the Trayvon Martin case. Those were live coverage, open courtroom, every moment dominated by court TV. This is old school. Mm-hmm. This is no cameras, notes being taken, Kelly running out there to do her 11 a.m. shot, Jenny going in there to fill that coverage. So it feels very much like we turn the clock back in the coverage of this. And look, for better or worse, that is just the hand that we've been dealt here.
Yeah, and it's given us an opportunity to do really, these in-depth conversations all the time. So once again, thank you guys for watching. So okay, let's break down what we were talking about. This today or yesterday's. I see. Yeah, I always get caught doing that. It's yesterday. It's not today. Yeah. But hopefully by this point you guys understand what I mean here. But yesterday, the biggest thing that we were talking about is the cell phone records. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it kind of felt like the precursor to the closing of the argument, because it really was the wrap up, a minute-by-minute account via cell phone records called detail records of everything that both Larry and Maya were doing, not only the days prior to her disappearance, the day of her disappearance, and the day or days after her disappearance. So when it comes to a full timeline, we've gone over it in bits and pieces here throughout the duration of this trial, whether in our discussions or in discussions with other people, Jenny, Kelly, etc. This is really the first time where we're kind of seeing it all fully laid out in perhaps the clearest form we've seen since maybe preliminary hearings.
Yeah, and really, again, it's definitely one of those things that as we kind of go through the end of these, what I noticed about, especially with a lot of the testimony that we've had here, it definitely felt like a lot of recap here with this last day.
Very much so.
Very much just sort of, even though that's definitely something that like closing arguments you tend to do, it definitely just felt like sort of just kind of going back, looking, recapping and so forth and stuff like that.
Even though this is expert testimony, not actual closing arguments.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's a great prosecution strategy, right? Because you're still hammering home a lot of these key things without using up your closing argument time.
It ties very well into the overall case, which we're going to break down as well here. So let's start. We got a list here, so we're going to have some visual guidance to kind of show you the main hits on the day of and the day after, but we're actually going to start a few days before. Heavy spellcasting messages were beginning. We're going to start with January 5th. Larry goes to many different places. He goes to his Aunt Kathy's, goes to the hospital. He goes home for the day. Numerous calls to Kathy, Terry Vonville, that's his boss. Remind you, oftentimes he would send a lot of messages to him. He would take some time off work because of this. Terry was aware of the marital issues that they were having, his parents as well. We saw Maya call her father, 25-minute call between Patricia Laird and Maya. Remember, Larry got her phone number and had often contacted her, not just from his phone, but through other methods as well. He was the one who actually told Patricia Patricia that it was Maya and Jamie who were having an affair.
And then called to say that they were back at it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And then on January 6th, again, spellcasting continues. Maya researches divorce attorneys, continues. Larry continues to talk to family members, this time his parents, throughout the night. So oftentimes, again, these are phone records. So a lot of this is going to be based off of conversation. We will get into surveillance footage. We will get into some other pieces of evidence, but our main focus on this is those cell phone records. And that leads us here, Chris, to the day of.
Yeah, the day of events here, January 7th, the day of disappearance. You'll see here on your screen, we kind of put all the time codes in. So 12 to 2 p.m., Larry texts his boss and says, I'm not right. It's, again, sort of that same hour, Maya is calling divorce attorneys. We know that she spoke with a collaborative family group, which was then called Broaden Law. She completed that intake questionnaire at 2:33 p.m. At 2:52 p.m., Maya last seen on video cleaning her Jeep. Obviously, that is that video that has stayed with a lot of people in terms of what it is that last image of her. Then we obviously know that Jeep leaves for the car wash, food. At that same time, this is 3:22 now, Larry is sending spellcaster messages during this window of time. And then from 4:40 to 4:42, Maya returns home, but we don't necessarily see her.
We see the Jeep arrive.
Only. 5:48 p.m., Maya's last call to a divorce attorney is Alexander McIntosh. Takes about 10 minutes time. 7:52 is when we see Maya's last message to friends discussing Larry. 8:12 p.m., Google search for a TTR 125 motorcycle. This is a dirt bike. And at 9:23, Larry sends its investment portfolio screenshot to Lara May and Maylani. 10:35 p.m., neighbors hear kids playing outside. So that's the day of the disappearance, sort of, again, the real key points here that were made as far as, again, what it is that expert testimony was talking about. Then we go to now the day after the disappearance. This is January 8th. This is where things obviously become a little bit ominous, Jack.
And this is where the questions begin of where was Larry Millete at this point. So here on your screen, we'll see we update it here. 1:25 a.m. was when Maya's T-Mobile phone connection terminated all cellular connection permanently. The last location being the Millete home. The location from this point forward cannot be determined. So if your theory was Larry put her in the car and drove wherever it was, you're not going to see any cell phone evidence from her that would imply that is correct at this point. So again, we talk about circumstantial here. 2:36 a.m. Larry continues to send spellcaster messages saying, "Thank you, please make it stronger." We don't necessarily know the context of that. 5:58. A vehicle was maneuvering in a driveway. This is the Lexus that we have been talking about. It was the Lexus that came back with scratches. There was tests that were done for blood that came back inconclusive from this vehicle. Maneuvered in the driveway, it backed in, but it left shortly after. Fast forward 11, 12, 13 hours here, the Lexus returns with 444 unaccounted miles. We saw the defense make some comments about this, about the age of the car itself and whether the quote-unquote infotainment system, as it's often referred to, is able to, provide a lot of this information about, does it tell you where it went? Is that something that if you were to retroactively look into the device and try to extract that data, is that something that can be done? We heard one of the experts say that this isn't a model that is necessarily equipped with that kind of information, but nonetheless, after 13 hours or so, it returns. We also know that JR met Larry at the house. They were asking where Maya was. They were talking about their a recent argument that Larry and Maya had at the home. There was no implication. Of course, they didn't see Maya, but there was no implication at the time. A lot of these that we heard in the testimony that anything had necessarily been wrong with her. I believe it was told that she was asleep or she was resting or something of that nature, if I'm remembering that correctly. So coming back out here, just some details on some of the days after, before we really kind of maybe take a break here, talk about about the wrap up. We have another investigator, but we can kind of talk about that witness testimony in our following block when we're just going to really wrap up the case.
Yeah.
You're going to hear a lot of this again, but we really want to tie a bow on it before we get to the defense. Mari Chris repeatedly tries to reach Maya. Of course, that is her sister. Reported Maya missing to the Chula Vista Police Department. The time is listed at around 11:50 p.m., so nearly 48 hours after she was last seen. The defense asked if there was any cell records that existed for the Tabalanza family. They said no. So when it came to the, kind of a beat-by-beat timeline, that is what was presented in court on that day. And that really is the, at least from a testimonial standpoint, the last word that we really have about what these two individuals were doing the day before, after the disappearance of Maya Millete.
At the best of any recorded availability, right? Yeah,
Yep,
because
that is
I think
correct.
there is still, as we pointed out, a lot that we still don't know, even as much as we do know, based on a lot of that technological and the forensics that were done there. We're going to go over the prosecution's case, including also that last witness, but mostly again the sort of overall view of the prosecution's case is obviously it has been rested. We'll do all of that here after a quick 2-minute break. Welcome back, everyone. We have been going over the last day of the prosecution's case in the Larry Millete murder trial, but then also now we have one more witness that we want to talk about here. This is Justin Bostic, the investigator from the DA's office, because it covers a pretty unique sort of part of this case that I definitely kind of I don't want to say I enjoyed, but I took great interest in, because I do think it's one of those things that we don't necessarily think about from a investigation standpoint, or putting together a case, right?
And perhaps maybe subconsciously, selfishly, it kind of involves us.
Yeah, it
And it
does,
involves, not just
Yeah.
us talking about it. It involves, our news organization. It involves our local media
Yeah.
coverage, just the area, the market itself, the country, and the world.
Yeah. So this is someone. This is Justin Bostic, as I said. So
Investigator for the DA's office.
Investigator for the DA's office. So their testimony basically covered what was the media reach, right? Like, we like to think, we touch everybody's ears. We are able to get into all of those homes and bring the news to everybody, but it is limited. Every outlet's reach is limited and in scope. And so basically what he testified as doing is that in 2022, this is a year after now Maya went missing, they essentially did Google search of Maya's name and returned more than 2.2 million results across social media and news sites, and walked through exhibits from Dateline, 48 Hours, which our Kelly Hessedal obviously was interviewed as part of a later podcast for 48 Hours, Dr. Phil, Nancy Grace, Core TV, all of our local San Diego news stations, plus the Help Find Maya Facebook group that organized hundreds of volunteers and search events. They went out into the desert in San Diego County, Riverside, LA. They went all over Southern California and probably even beyond to try to find Maya. And then eventually, as it became more of a recovery mission, as they learned that Larry would be tried for murder, if they could find potentially where it is that she may have been buried. The judge instructed the jury, though, that this evidence was admitted only to show the reach of the search, essentially trying to say, if Maya did exist elsewhere, at least I think this is the point, because I'm only reading the notes. I'm not listening to the prosecution.
This is my interpretation.
This is my interpretation that, like, if Maya existed and it is true that she ran away, she wanted to escape Larry, there is, in their opinion, a very low chance that that is possible because her name, her face was plastered in all of these places as people attempted to find her, to find out what happened to her. And that, again, this was not something that was just tied to Southern California. This was national. This was even international, both on the other side of the border here, but then I believe also back in the Philippines as well, too. There were some flyers and some billboards that were put out. Of course, again, nothing is ever a certainty in this life, but I do think that it was a very unique case that they presented there. And also, I don't think that that was happenstance, that it was the last witness that they brought out.
Yeah.
Which is to say, look, all of this is circumstantial, and the defense is probably about to tell you, in large part of their case, that Maya exists elsewhere, that she ran away from home, she left her family behind, and that Larry has been pinned for her murder. But if that's the case, this is how many times her face showed up, how many times her name showed up, and throughout all these mediums, how is it that no one's been able to find her?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that face has been, perhaps broadcast on every television, every household in America, a vast majority in Mexico, a lot in the Philippines as well. So the argument is saying, show us why that is possible. But of course the judge, oftentimes, as he does with certain parts of this, of these cases that you're seeing for both the prosecution and the defense, this has happened both ways, narrowing the scope in which this piece of evidence, this testimony, can be interpreted. So, the final thing there, that is the final tidbit before we go into the wrap up here. So we're going to start off here from the beginning. We're going to talk about the prosecution's framework. This is what 6 weeks has all culminated in. This is the story that they're saying. So take a look here on your screen. This is the prosecution's case. The theory: the marriage crumbled. Larry sought progressively worse methods to either save the marriage and, as time went on, to punish Maya. Some of the key things that we learned here, or perhaps we already knew from preliminary hearings, but we have entered into evidence. This is for the jury themselves. Physical evidence. Remember, hemlock, the chemical specifically that is in it, called conine, that is a toxic chemical that can lead to death if ingested in the right amounts, that was found at the scene. There was vials in the house that had that, tested positive. We know about these spell casting purchases, not only the purchases, but we know the queries in which we were seeing Larry ask from multiple people. We had one of the spell casters take the stand. A lot of it had to do with saving the marriage. At first it was, inflict illness, injury, have her depend on me, different ways to either save the marriage or to establish and maintain a sense of dependency. Loud bangs that were heard multiple times. There has been speculation that these were gunshots, but of course it is crucial that we point out that has not been confirmed. The FBI did an investigation on that. They were not able to determine what the cause of that sound was. And then, of course, the 400 to 600 mile drive the day after. We've heard Larry say he was at the beach. We've heard lifeguards say we did not see this vehicle. We did not see this person there. So that continues to be a mystery, but they are pointing to, we even heard some speculation, I would say. I don't want to say that because that's something that wouldn't be really permitted in court, but to a certain extent, the concept of taking a body, going to a certain location, in this sense, they say, near the California-Arizona border to, quote unquote, check on a body. That was something that was brought up during testimony. So all of that to say that there was a vast time period in which Larry was gone, drove a lot for an extended period of time. What was being done? The theory for the prosecution, perhaps the wording of it has been very carefully selected as to not, be too speculative in court, was to bury the body. That's what we're interpreting from that defense.
Yep.
Cell phone data. We just went over that today. Maya has an urge to leave. Called divorce attorneys. Larry, of course, used subliminal messaging. He used his cell phone data to reach out to a bunch of family members, do all of this, and then travel records. This is another one when we're talking about where Maya could be if she isn't dead. They talk about that Maya's was last seen near the border a few days before her death. To be clear. However, that was January 4th of 2021, but that was tied to a family trip, not travel. Their case here saying that was the last time we saw her at any sort of border. So if she went to Mexico, if she went to Canada, if she went, abroad, there is no physical evidence that suggests that she has done that, because the last time she did it, she was with family.
Yeah. And look, I mean, this is a case that obviously has been, wide ranging, and one that I think that, was well done. I have been skeptical, I think because so much of it has been circumstantial, but I think that, Kelly helped us sort of take another look at it. And I don't want to use the word skeptical necessarily, but left me wanting more. I mean,
we understand the challenge that was ahead of
them. Yeah. But this is the case that was handed to them. And this is what it is that they have to work with. And it's one that I do think that they were able to sort of put together pretty well. Like, I do not believe that in any way that they left anything sort of on the bone, if you will, but they did necessarily, they did basically, I think, the best of what they could do with what it is that was available for them, right? Of course, I'm not a prosecutor, I'm not a legal scholar, but this was definitely one that I think there was not a lot to go off of, if you will. So
yeah, and you mentioned the investigation about, taking what they work with. There was oftentimes where there could have been quote unquote bombshell, revelations. And I think what I'm really referring to is some of these test results.
Yeah.
Was that blood? Was that her blood? That was inconclusive. The bangs, were those gunshots? That was inconclusive. So, you have all of these, ingredients to a theory that could prove to be crucial, yet there wasn't that opportunity to get any sort of confirmation as to what that ingredient is. So you mentioned meat off of the bone. I think there is meat on the bone, but I don't think it's intentional. You know what I mean? That's a circumstantial thing. Really quickly, just to finish off the prosecution's case, we heard a lot of testimony from family members. Father, mother-in-law, sister, brother, et cetera. Oftentimes it was from Maya, who oftentimes didn't want to bother the family about their marital issues, slowly put herself in a position, put in a position nonetheless, that she felt like she needed to confide, B, make arrangements, whether that was financial plans to, even be able to afford a divorce attorney. A lot of the same family members had similar conversations with Larry about, about the nature of their marriage.
About the affair.
There were a few instances of concerning conversations. Some of them had to do with what, the prosecution has honed in on to a certain extent. Hemlock, that was something. There was a family member, I can't think of who it was exactly off the top of my head at this moment, who was concerned that he was going to use it on himself. There was instances at a party where, he motioned to a firearm that perhaps he had. Of course, firearms were also found at the house. That's something that, is oftentimes forgotten here in this case. However, we didn't see that really be mentioned as much as perhaps maybe we would have anticipated earlier. And then, of course, as we mentioned here at the top of this block, the media reach, local, national, international interests. Their claim, Maya would have been found right by now. So there would have been some way in which there could have been
5 years.
5 years, extended coverage, multiple opportunities for, if possible, contact. They're saying that that the lack of evidence perhaps is one of their greatest pieces of evidence.
Which, I mean, that is certainly a take, and that is certainly a move here. And we'll have to see exactly how it is, obviously, that it's digested here by, of course, the jury, because that is ultimately who has the greatest say here on obviously what will happen next. So obviously this is, where do we go from here? The defense obviously is going to be making their case. And forgive me, I don't want to repeat this here, but have we gone over sort of the next steps here in terms of the process here for this case? So we know that
let's do it one more time before we take a break.
One more time before we take this break here. But we'll be having obviously the defense. Then we are going to maybe take about a break. Which day do we think the jury is actually going to have still? Jury probably get the case by the end here of Tuesday.
Yeah.
Then it's just jury deliberations.
No court on Thursday.
No court tomorrow, which is Thursday. Obviously, no court having been on Friday. Monday is when we are expecting here to get this. So today, the defense case expected to end already, just one day.
We'll have Jenny Day on.
Probably has already started, right?
I believe it starts at 10 a.m.
Okay, 10 a.m.
today. So, if that's the case, if there's, if there's a sidebar before the jury comes in or any sort of hearing prior to that, that could be the case. I'm not entirely sure. Again, we're going off of notes here. We do know we'll have Jenny Day here tomorrow. Yeah. So we'll be able to get a better look at what this defense argument is. And as you mentioned, long weekend, no Thursday, no Friday, no Saturday, Sunday, of course, no Monday. So we got about 5 days here before we see after today where court is back in session. Of course, closing arguments, deliberations, and then we're just on standby.
Yeah, and just to again, just to put a nice little bow in it, we expect that today will be the wrap of the defense's case, but obviously that doesn't have to be for certain. So don't just we didn't expect that the prosecution was going to end just yesterday, right? So anything can happen. All right, that's going to do it for our sort of wrap up here of the prosecution's case, the look ahead to the defense, and where we stand right now in terms of what will happen and when the closing arguments will be made and when the jury will eventually begin deliberations.